All right. Why am I waving? Uh, no one can see me yet.
Yay!
Hello. Hello. Yeah. We're live.
Woohoo!
Hit those hearts. Let us know that you're here. Say where you're coming from. All right. Here we go.
Go! Hi,
Everyone. Hey, everyone. So happy to see you. Hope you all had a nice Thanksgiving. If you're tuning in live or watching the replay, comment below. Let us know where you are checking us out from. Also, if you are in the States, the US, let us know how your Thanksgiving was. Love to know. But since this is the ASC Success Quickie, I think we should get started. If you're not familiar with the Accountability Success Circle, we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. But I'm Gary Ware, and this is my amazing co-host, April Schluter. Hi, April.
Woo! Hello, everyone. Hope you guys had an awesome Thanksgiving if you are in the US. If you're not in the US, then hope you had a great last week.
Yeah. And Patricia says hi. What's up, Patricia?
Hey, Patricia.
Yeah. So this week, if you didn't see the title, this one's for the parents out there, and we're talking about having harmony between parent life and work life. And if this is something that you are interested in, make sure to say, "Yep, that's me" in there. So let's get started. Since this is the quickie, I will go first with our first tip, and that is all about structure. Structure is so important. It is mission critical. Whether you're a single parent, co-parenting, married, but this is something that I learned being someone. My son Garrett will be 3 in March, and prior to Garrett, I was like, oh, I can do this, I can do that, I can do this, and I, had my morning rituals, and I went into the office at this time, and me and my wife, like, we just sort of had like this schedule that was just sort of free flowing. My wife Courtney's a little bit more structured than I am, but once Garrett showed up, I found myself being torn between like, oh, work and I want to be a good dad, and when I was working, I was thinking about not being with Garrett, and when I was with Garrett, I was thinking about like the stuff I had to do. So it was important for me to set structure, to say, all right, I'm going to work at this time, and then this is the end of work, and then I'm going to go home. And I learned this from Brendan Bouchard, a ritual that I do when I go into work of like, all right, who do I need to be? What do I need to do? And then when I go home, like, I literally sit in my car for about like two minutes of just, all right, let's let that go. So that's my thing on about structure. April, what's your take on structure?
I completely agree. I am very structured. If you don't already know me, I just spent the
She is.
last 2 to 3 weeks, or maybe the last month, trying to redo our family calendars because my kids are now 8 and 10, and I'm trying to empower them to be more independent and do things on their own. So I'm teaching my oldest how to check email, how to add things to the calendar, and all of these things so that we can see or so that they can learn how to create structure for themselves instead of me just doing it because that was how I ran the ship before. But it's super, super critical for you to at least have some sort of structure in place, because if you'll forget otherwise. There's so much to do, and if you're a parent, then you probably are shaking your head going like, "Mhm, I agree." So, yeah. But I wanna share tip number 2, if that's okay, because this is going to
Yes.
almost be an oxymoron with what we were just talking about with tip number 1, which is number 2, you have to be flexible. And when you were talking about tip number 1, Gary, I was thinking about the conversation that we had at World Domination Summit in 2016, and you had just told me that you were expecting, and you were talking about how you had this like rigid morning structure, and I was like, okay, well, get ready for that to be rocked in some way, shape, or form. And you were like, yeah, uh-huh. And then when Garrett was born, you were like, oh, you were right. So what's funny is that like structure is so important, but flexibility is too, because it's almost this balance and struggle between being able to plan and being able not to plan. Because at any moment's notice, something can happen with your kid, or your kid can do something that will totally take you off your structure. So one example, a few weeks ago, my son tripped at school and he had to get stitches on his head. And I had this, I was just at the school volunteering for their hot lunch program. And then I came home and I was like, all right, I'm ready to work. I did my mom time today. And then I lost my entire afternoon. And so you will not you will lose your sanity if you don't allow yourself to be flexible. So I think that all parents know that when you transition from being a single person or like a non-parent to a parent, you get to make the choices and make commitments, but you have to be very forgiving as a parent, because stuff can happen, and at a moment's notice you could have all the intentions to execute on one thing and it can completely fall apart. And you have to laugh about it because that's just the way of parenting. Gary, do you agree?
I agree, 110%. And that's, for me, one of the things of doing improv is helped me to
Yeah.
be flexible and allow me to be agile. And, as you can see here, I'm working from home. And, that's just all about, that sort of parent life of being, open to having things shift. And whether you are solopreneur or entrepreneur, or you work in an office, um, you know, you don't have these two separate lives of like, this is my work life, this is my home life. They blend, and it's so important to just be able to give yourself grace when things show up that is unexpected, and
Yeah,
just roll with it.
totally.
And so that is a great segue into the last tip number 3, about communication.
Hmm.
And that is something that I've definitely leveled up in the over the last like 2.5 years, between communication between my wife Courtney and myself, and between others, and just being very clear about a few things. What are my needs? What's going on? And just letting people know what's up. And at first, I was a little bit sort of hesitant, of like, oh, I don't want to seem like I'm demanding a lot. And personally, I had to get over, a lot of, stigma about, being the dad, the working dad. When Garrett was first born, I did have a business with a business partner. And I felt like a lot of the people, especially males that I was talking to, they had this point of view of, oh, it's okay to be a crappy dad. It's better to be a crappy dad than a crappy business owner. And I don't agree with that. I feel like, I want to be involved. I don't feel like I know. I want to be extremely involved in Garrett's life. And that just requires communication to my business partner of like, hey, this is what's going on. Communication with my wife, especially when, things are kind of hectic at the office and I need to stay a little bit later. And that is something that has definitely, helped. And I was pleasantly surprised that so many people were so accommodating. So that's my take on that. What do you got?
I agree. I think that being a parent is really, really hard, really, really challenging, and at the same time, so rewarding. And it is very interesting that, especially when I was working also and employed by somebody else, it was in some of my other work, some of my first jobs out of college, they were like, you have to choose your work or your family, which is a ridiculous priority choice. You can't, and in those instances when I was younger, I chose my work and I hated it. And as I started to realize that work-life balance was super important to me, I made, I made conscious choices about the jobs that I took based on work-life balance. And even though I'm a high achiever and I tend to choose work more often than not, and just because it's like I'm so excited about the work that I do, um, I also used that as an example, and I sacrificed a lot when I was parenting early on, and I know that that's not the way to live. And so it's just crazy to me that, and I think that companies are becoming more and more forgiving, but I think, or understanding, not forgiving, because it's not something that we should be apologizing for.
No.
But I think, they're trying to make those accommodations better, because parenting is such is probably the hardest job you'll ever have to take, and it always evolves and it always changes. And so definitely communicating with your your business partners, your boss, your coworkers, your spouse, your friends, you need to be on that same page. And if you're not transparent, then they won't know. They'll just make assumptions, and it's better to just be honest than just giving them the opportunity to make up a story about what is going on with you. So yes, communication, super important.
Yes.
So that's our
So,
quickie for all you parents. We're both at home right now. I was like, I'm just gonna wear what I slept in to this. And sometimes that's gotta be the way that things are when things are super busy or crazy. And sometimes you've got your kids showing up in your videos, but we embrace that here at the Accountability Success Circle. Gary's like, what are you talking about?
I know, huh?
But for those of you who liked this video, if you have any ahas or you have any things that you can mention, ways that you can relate as a fellow parent, please feel free to put those in the comments. We are the success team leaders at the Accountability Success Circle. If you are interested in knowing more about us, you can check out the pages on both Gary and my website, or the link below, which is a lot easier. And check us out and get to know what we do, and hopefully we can continue to share more tips down the road. So
Yes.
you, I think next week.
Next
Right?
week. Yeah. One more before the holidays.
Yay!
Yay.
See you guys
All right.
later.
Bye.
Bye.